My target is like just talk through you how to create a Power application, Power Automation, use Power and the SharePoint list, because most of the customers we had, they had SharePoint on their premises. They don't want to use common data services or the Microsoft Dataverse. So that's why just maybe most of the customers we like to use SharePoint list. That's why I use SharePoint list as a data source. That's basic one. And then this is me. And again, I'm a Microsoft developer for MVP for developer technologies for more than this is my 14th MVP award for this year. So it's like for that one. And then we have Sri Lanka Developer Forum. And then I have a startup called PHIT. We do on cloud development plus these business applications. We have done some nice Power application for customers who work with this like repair agents, or maybe they have like stores people visits. We create a nice visit application using Power Apps. They wanted a visit application. Also, we created a like a job sheet application for a mechanical company. They repair motors, so all the different parts we worked that. And again, I am a speaker. This is my blog askweekly.com. That's like kind of that. So today I'm going to use 3 different technologies on Power Platform, which is Power Apps and Power Automation, Cloudflow, and Microsoft List, known as SharePoint List. So these are the main 3 technologies I'm going to use to demo my application. So in my session detail, I have mentioned about I'm going to do a employee review using a SharePoint list and this thing, because I thought to make it more exciting, let's create an invoice, because it involves 2 different lists. It has an invoice header and invoice items. Let's get these 2 data and juggle around, and then let's create a nice application around it. So this is the architecture. Normally as a developer, we just send an architecture, how to do these things. And this is, it looks like these are the different bits and pieces you have around. So you have a Power App, and then you have this data source and the Cloudflow, again the storage. So when you start this application, you will, at the first thing, you will create invoices and you will get invoices back to your application. So it's like back and forth communication here. Next step will be, you'll be creating, okay, we have an invoice list, let's print this invoice. Let's click that one, and then it goes straight to the invoice ID to the Cloudflow. The next step will be, okay, the Cloudflow receive this information, okay, it's a good place to trigger. Click and get some data, get the relevant invoice ID or get the relevant invoice information from my data source. Okay, I have the data source right now, the data is available, I have the invoice header and I have the list of items. Let's look at the template. Get the template from the storage, which is Microsoft OneDrive for Business. You get the template, a nice template. It doesn't matter what is the template, because most of the customers I had, they ask, okay, can we print a nice PDF from this automation? So whether do we have to like just do you have to write HTML and create? No, I said if you have a nice Word template, give it to me. I will just create the PDF for you. It's the same thing I'm going to do right now. Then send the PDF. That's it. So to start with, you get the data, write the data, send the invoice ID, trigger the flow, get the data, and get the template, and finally create the PDF. That's the way. Now let's look at a demo. That's my main purpose, because I am just not very good at PowerPoint slides. So basically I go with demos. Let's come back to my browser. So this is, let's start with the Power Apps itself, right? As a developer, we used to create solutions using Visual Studio. So that's even a simple small application, I create a solution. That's a very good practice if you are even a normal citizen developer or a normal developer. It doesn't matter. It's better you create a solution, because it will contain everything you need within that solution. It's straight away you can export it and give it to somebody else. That's a very good practice. To start with, you can just click so you click the solutions, you have plenty of solutions here. You click new solution and you can just give a name and the publisher. So it says this is my company name. I have created a publisher. If you create this publisher, is a very good thing, because when you publish to these application into these Power Apps stores, these stores, and then the publisher is very important, because all the data, if you're using common data services or the Microsoft Dataverse, it will give you like this. I'll just open it and show it to you. It's yeah. Okay, why did it sign out? Let's again edit publisher. Sign in. 1 second. This is a very good thing, like two-way communication authentication. Yes, approve. Approve. Yes, please. Let's make sure it's loading because it's dynamics. It will take time because it's loading from here, from dynamics. Because you can just from this part you can give a small like a notation in front of this common data services. Normally it will create, when you create a table, it will say CDS something. So for this one you can just create your own company notation in front of the data sources you create. That's why the publisher comes from. So then you can just go this speech ID publisher. I will show when it loaded. Let's go through it. Then you can create, after the solution, you go inside the solution, you can create all the things you have here. So I'll start with the application, a canvas app. Then you can select, okay, whether it's a, let's see, okay, it's loaded. I will show it to you. See, you will see here, this is the company information. You will get here the company information here. Okay, this is the one you will get. So any entity you will get here, it will say under PIT or whatever the things you give in front of it, it will come like that. So that's the publisher information. Let's go back to my Power App. Yeah, so let me show you what I have created. I have whatever I completed. I have three things. You have the invoice app, which is the Power App. I'll open it. So while it loading, I'll show it to you. I have done everything, this one, every example using this community plan, which is free. It has it's available. It says explore the create and full featured environment for development. You have everything on Power Apps and Power Automation to use within this. You can just, it's free. It's, you can use it for your personal learning purposes. You can't just use it for commercially. For learning purposes, maybe for your demos, maybe for your YouTube training tutorials, you can create this. If you have work or school account, straight away you can just create it, because I am using it the same thing, because you will see here it says Victory Smile environment like this. So that means this is my personal environment. I can play around with it. I can just delete environments, create environments within these things. It's very good. Everything you have it. Every feature you get, it will be available for you for testing and play around. So that's why I'm creating this within my environment, so you will understand, even though you can just create it through. Now let's application must have view open. Yes, all right. To start with, this is the Power application, and while it's loading, let me go through my invoice listing. This is how you reach. You click, you go to list. So you have your recent lists here. So all the lists, I have these two lists here, the invoice items and the invoice header. If you look at the invoice header, it's a simple invoice header. So it has a title and the amount and the invoice date and the due date and whatever it is paid or not, and then the customer, whoever the customer. This is a simple invoice header. And if you go back again to the invoice items, so we have this invoice ID. Normally when you create a new list, it will get as title. I will show it to you. Just if you just click here, let's go back to my list. You click new list. So it will ask for a blank list, or maybe from Excel, or maybe you can select from a existing list. Also you get templates here. I'm going to say blank list. You can just say okay, invoice item demo, let's say, and you can create an icon. You can select save to, where to save. Normally this is a front end for your SharePoint list. You can just get all your SharePoint stuff here. I have the SharePoint site here. I'm going to say create inside this one. Let's click. Right, by default it gets you the first one as the title. You will see it will say title here, see the title. So this is how you get that, but you can just rename it using this wheel. You just go here and then click here, this icon, you click on that one icon, click, and then list settings, just scroll back, click on the title here, the name, see is the stuff you get, the title. You click on that one, can just straight away rename that file, the name invoice, like that, as simple as that. You can just straight away, and then you okay, and you can go back to your list. Site content. Now you have your list here. List. So I am telling because why I'm just to show it you why you have to do that. You can just you will think, okay, can't we do this here? If you click column settings rename, will it do the same? But it will rename here, but it won't affect if you just link this as a data source. I'm not sure why it's happening, but it will still show it as the title column, right? So if you have to go through this path to get it as the invoice ID from your Power App. This is how you do that. Now you have this at this end, you have list. I have two different tables. Let's go back to my Power Apps. Just allow. Now you have a nice little invoice app. See, it has nice little a theme. You have all the invoice items. If you want to click new invoice, you can create the invoice. If I just click OK, maybe Power Platform, Power Bootcamp as the customer, I'm going to select a date. Now you will see the default date is now for today, and again due date is like another few days after the due date. Now you can just create the invoice header. This will create the invoice header. And then now you can just say invoice items, like let's say like paper clips, 100. So it will like just one add. Now you get the invoice item. You can say paper clips, 100 the quantity, $1 and $100, and then the amount will be here. Again, maybe box of A4. Here I'm going to say one. We'll say like $12 and then add. See, now $112, it will be available here. After adding all the invoice information, you can just click finish. Let's go back, it will add here. Now you have the invoices, or both of these things are using a SharePoint list or the Microsoft list as the data source. Now when you click print, it will trigger the flow, and then it will pick up the information for this invoice. Like for example, this invoice ID is 4, the date and the information, $112. It will pick up the information and it will trigger, and it will create an invoice under these invoices folder. Let's go back to my app. Let's click print. Let's go back to my invoices OneDrive. Let's wait for it. It triggers the Power App and it will create the template first. Let's wait for a second. Let me check. Let's refresh it. Yes, see, you have this invoice now. If you click on the invoice, you will see a nice little PDF. Let's make it a little bit bigger. See, nice little invoice with some image formatting and nice little table formatting, and you have the amount and then the total amount. So this is bill to, and then the invoice ID, and all the notes. This is a PDF you can create. Let's begin. How do we have to start? This is how you start. First thing, let's go back to Power App. I'll show you how to do that. I will explain how I did that. So let's go back to Power Apps. First things, if you look at these things, you have two different screens in my application, the first screen and the second screen. So let me go back to my Power App. I will show you new. I will show some parts I have done here. I'm going to select the tablet form factor. And then I'll go back to my other app. Then you will see how it's done. So I'll see some I will show you some important parts here. Skip. Now you have the normal Power App Studio. So you have your tree view here, the canvas here, and the property area here. So normally what I'll do is at the first step as a developer, what we do is we just rename these things. Let's say invoice list screen. This is the first step I'll do. So I don't normally put spaces because it's a bit confusing for me. We are used to no space variable names. That's why I just created like this. So it's up to you. It allows spaces between these names. It's nothing to worry about. Now next step what I did was okay, I selected a theme. So you have plenty of nice little themes. Almost you have everything here to start with. I used the dark blue theme. I'll just click here. Now you have this nice little theme for your application. Let's get back here. See, now a nice little theme. Even though you just put some text here, whatever it is, let me show it to you. If you just add a rectangle here, according to that theme, nice little blue theme, right? First thing I did was I get the data source. I create these data sources. I get into my application. I click here. You search for SharePoint. Should be a space SharePoint. Why is that? Maybe data. Let's share SharePoint. Yes, SharePoint. And you click SharePoint, and you will find your SharePoint list. Then it will list all your sites. I will click my site here. Then I have two different. This is the one I just created. I'm going to select invoice items and invoice header. Connect. Now you have two different data sources. If you look at my other app, the first one, I have a nice little list here. See, this is called the data grid, not the data grid, it's called the gallery. I have created a blank gallery and then I have put some labels inside that. Let's go back to this application. As the start, plus you have this gallery, or you can just say insert. Where is my gallery? Click down, gallery, and then I'm going to create a blank vertical gallery. See, now you have this nice little blank vertical gallery here. And let's get back here. And then I'm going to select the data source as my invoice header. Right? Nothing will happen, but it's you will just witness. Just if you click on this edit gallery, you will see this area. This is called the item template. Whatever the height, whatever the things you put here, it will be repeated, right? So let's go back. I'll just create a label first. The label, see, automatically picks up the first one. This is this item dot title. Now, I don't need this one. Let's create. I'll just change this one. I'm going to say this item. I don't need the title. Let's get me back the invoice ID. The ID. See, now ID 2. If you just see, when you just drag up, you will see all the other stuff. Now this is how you design it. So you have the invoice title, again another label, it will automatically go here. Then let's say I need the invoice customer. So you have the customer and again another label, drag drop. Let's create the customer, maybe the invoice date, Yes, you have it here. I'm going to show you some bits and pieces I have done. Label. Then not the title, the due date. You have the due date. And finally, one label for invoice amount. Say amount. amount. Now you have this amount. This is how you do. Now if you see on this screen, it's nicely formatted. These are things I want to show you. Like the date is like this date, even though you can just change that date, and then you have nice little dollar, and then you have this comma, and then two different the decimal place and the zeros. So this is how you do that. First thing, let's pick up this date. So it says text property here. So if we see this part, the text property and then the value for it. See, two different things, the text property and the value for it. It's like an equation. Left side you have the property, the right side you have the whatever the equation or the function, or maybe you have the you can just write here this PowerFX language, which is like similar to Excel. All the functions you can just use. So you have this item invoice date. Okay, I don't want this date time. Let me just change it. Let's copy this. But depending on your region or whatever your customer, normally depending on your, if it's a US customer, the date format is okay, but if we are working with a Europe customer, maybe within this our region, it will like this. We use the date like this. You just create text, then your data source item, this item the invoice dates, comma, then you can just create the date format. You can just say DD, MM, and YY. 4 different dates. See, nicely the date is formatted here. You can do the same here. Now let's look at this one. Again, same thing. Invoice amount, you just cut it, text, you paste here, comma, and then the format. Number, comma, number, and then 2 zeros, whatever. If there's nothing, replace with 0, else you do something there. Now see, if you want a dollar in front of it, you can just say dollar. Right? So this is how you format these things. And then I have created a nice little line here to separate. So this is how you do that. Let's go back to my application. Make sure you save it. Let's save it and give it an application, app demo. Save. It's saving as the cloud. Yeah. Next step. This is how you do that. You just click this template, and you click insert, and then or you can click this button and get a rectangle there. Right? The rectangle will be replaced. And you just move rectangle the left to right. Just go here and then create the height 1. It depends on your height. And then slowly drag down. You have a nice little separation here. See, nicely separated. This is very, and then I'm going to show you another thing. So if you, as a developer, we are very love to create version controlling, which is as a source code. We have done something, we commit it, and then we write a small note saying, okay, we have done this part. This is the version of. Then when you just, if you do something in the way a mistake, if you want to roll back, you can just select that point and then come back to that point. So this is how you do that. You just normally, if you press Ctrl S, it will automatically save, no problem. But you select file, and then if you go to this version node, so I'm going to say I have added a blue line separator. Save. So this is a very good practice. If you just click see all versions in your app, you will see I have added a blue. Then you have just one by one, you have all the information within this version control, and then you can just click more and publish. You can publish any version you want. So you can just, okay, if I have a developer version and then the version 2 is developing, but the version 1 is the live version, you can just say, okay, please publish this, you develop and we test it, and then again publish a different version. This is how you create versioning on your application. Let's go back to my application. That's one part of the thing, right? This is how you do that. So next step is, now we have to go back to your flow. Before that, let me show you how to create the template. If you open your folder, this is my folder. This is the invoice complete, the template part. This is what we're going to use as Microsoft Word. If you look at, this is the normal Word. Everybody is using Microsoft Word. We'll know how to create these sort of things. This is a simple table, and again another table. This is a table, a merge cell, and this is also a table with merging, and then I have removed all the lines, right? If you just, I'll just show it to you. If you click here, you have all the lines here. It's a simple table. Click and then hide those things, no border, right? Now you will see these fields. These are the fields you're going to replace from the cloud flow. The invoice number, the invoice date, the due date, the customer, and all these items. Because I thought while create this example rather than this employee review, because this is a bit complex one. If you tackle this one, it's no problem. You can just tackle almost any kind of a templating thing. This is where you start. Before you begin, you have to prepare this document as a template, not just a Word document, because we're going to replace all those things from my cloud flow. So normally you will get this menu developer. If you don't get it, you can just, I think you can just go to preferences and you can just get that done. Like you can just edit this ribbon and get it available here, right? The developer menu, you will get, you have the developer menu. You will see all the developer items. I'm going to use this area of the developer item. If you look at this area, this is the area I'm going to use. Blocks. This area I'm going to use as my development part. First thing, you go here, you select this invoice. I'm going to replace this invoice with this item. You see here, this one, right? It's a normal label. It says, if you give mouse over, it says a plain text controller. Click on that one. Now you will get a template here. Now click properties, give it a proper name. I'm going to say invoice number. Okay. You can just do the same here. You select label, properties. I'm going to say invoice date. That's okay. Now you know what to do. You can just come 1, 2, 3. All the things you can just rename these things. You can just say, okay, this one, invoice due date, properties. You can say due date, right? Okay. Now the tricky part is this item. This area, because this area will be repeating. You don't know how many items you have. At the moment, I might have 1 item, I might have like 100 items, or maybe 2 items, 5 items. So this should be something repeating. So you can just have to supply something repeating, and then automatically flow will populate these things, and then we can convert it. This is how you do that. First thing, you will nicely create this table. I have created a template here from, I think from this one, table design, and then I just click one of these things, right? So just select this row, simple row. You just go through, select that row, right? After you select row, you go back to your developer and then select this item, this one, right? This one, it says repeating section control. You click on that one, you will get the entire thing as the repeating item. Then click properties, give it a proper name saying invoice, click OK. Now you have invoice items repeating. Now each label again you can select properties, you can say item description. Okay. Do the same for all these things, and again for this. I'll show it a completed version. This is my completed document. This is the template. This is the completed version of this document. You will see all these things are invoice item, and then the quantity. Let me just zoom it a bit. You will see all these things, invoice item and the amount, like that, right? You got the idea. Next step will be you just download, you save it, and next step you go back to your OneDrive. So I have OneDrive here. Where's my OneDrive? Yeah, go back. Let's close this and go back to my office. Oops. Sorry. Right, go back to OneDrive. I have my this one, my folder. I have 2 different folders. The template folder I copied that template, same template, the word template I have copied here inside the my files, this part. That's it. That's the only thing you have to do. Next thing will the flow will handle next part. Let's go back to the desktop flow and have a look at that. Right, this is my flow. See, have tested, fail. This is a good practice thing. You just fail, and then you succeed. Right? Just click on edit. You will see it's a nice little flow. It has something like few steps. So first step. So if you see these steps, these are not the default steps. So if you look at these things, I have renamed these things. Oops, yeah. It's a very good practice to rename. Then you will understand your flow. You will say, okay, get item, invoice header. Get items, invoice items. Initialize variable, yes, initialize variable item amount, apply to each invoice items. Then you don't have to worry about what's going on these steps. It will be a very good practice. You do that because I have everything. I have renamed it. First step, you should rename. Look at the first thing, the trigger of this application, right? The trigger means it's Power Apps. It's triggering from Power Apps. So I'll start from here. I'll create a new flow within this solution. You have this solution done. I'm going to click apps. Sorry, apps should be a cloud flow. The first trigger, I renamed it. Let's say PDF. So now the trigger should be, normally what I going to do is I'll normally start before testing. I don't create any Power Apps or something like that. I'll just start with a manual flow. I'm going to create manually trigger the flow. Click. And I'm going to create a small input here saying text invoice ID. This is how I test my flow. So I don't have to worry about whether whoever created this Power App will be is created yet not. I don't care because I know from my developer. So I will be getting here, depending on the architecture, I will getting an invoice ID. So I don't have to worry about because I have the data source, I have the flow, and I have all these parts here. So I can separately, even another developer or another few guy can work on this part, right? So let's go back to my flow. It says invoice ID. I'm going to say please enter an input, whatever the input. So let's say invoice ID is next step. Next step will be depending on this invoice ID, we need to pick up these data. First will be from my list this invoice header, because invoice header will be the first item I have to pick up. Imagine this item, I'll pick up this invoice item depending on this one, because I have created, when you create items, I have saved this item. I will show you in the Power Apps. Let's go back to my Power Apps. This one, right? I'll go to my other screen, new invoice, right? Look at how it is done. This create invoice button. The create invoice, this is a normal form linked to my data source, which is the invoice header. You can just see it here. The invoice header, you will see the invoice header, right? And if you click on edit fields, you will see all the fields, the customer, invoice date, due date, all these are available for me. And that's done. Now when you click on this create button, you will see this area, right? Look at these things. First, I have two different things. The first one will explain submit the invoice form. The second one has this thing. If it's the invoice ID 0 greater than 0, please navigate to the invoice screen. That means I have already created an invoice and then go back, because this item I have using this button for two different purposes. You will see that right now. Now submit form. Let's invoice form. I have renamed it again the invoice form. If you click on the invoice form and go back to the advanced on success event, see what will happen there. Let me zoom it again. On success, what should happen? On success, please create a local variable here. a local variable saying invoice ID from the last submit ID. That means I have submitted the form, please pick up that ID and then store it inside a variable. That's the instruction I have given on success. Why on success? It's a very good practice. You never do it here after submitting a form, because we don't know whether maybe a connectivity issue, whatever the issues, the form submit might fail. It's always a good practice. You do it here, this part on success. See this area. That's always a very good practice. Then create a variable. And then when you create this variable, on success means it will pick up the last inserted ID and put it inside this variable. Depending on that variable, if you look at the text property of my button, see, zoom it. See, it says invoice ID greater than 0. That means I have created an invoice, then change the text into finish and then create, else create. So where does the create button comes from? And next step, this is how the variable is. That's why I created a variable, the invoice ID, whether if it is greater than 0, that means we have always an invoice ID, then change into the finish. If it is finished, when on select, that's why I'm checking it. If invoice ID greater than 0, then go to the invoice screen, because we have finished the invoice. And then another thing, the new screen, go to action on visible. That means when you display the screen, make sure your variable is set to 0, because it will always a new item, new invoice, because I'm coming from this screen. From this screen, I will say always new invoice. That means there's nothing. The create button will be here. I'm going to create another customer saying, okay, customer 2, and then create. See, automatically it changes to finish and it picks up the ID. And then next step will be this button. I will show it what will happen. This button, maybe item 1, quantity 1, and 1 add. See, it stores here. Let's click finish. Now it goes back to the screen. This is how it works. Now let's look at the add button. If you look at the add button, see, it's a little bit more thing. Zoom the screen a bit. Things, see this area. So it's a patch. That means please patch this skin. That means invoice items my second table. Default means a new record. Always a new record. Please do that, because if you see here, see this item lookup. Lookup means get an invoice ID, get some ID from the data, but update the existing one. But here I'm not using the existing one. I'm using a new one. That's why it says defaults invoice items. And next step, let's go back to this part of the screen. I'll show it to you here. Nice. Now invoice ID, which is invoice ID where I got it from, the invoice ID, and the item is from the text box, and the value part of the text box again here, this area. See the value part of the text box. Oops, sorry. Should be like this. The value part of the text box, again the value part of the other text box. Please so, because I have created number fields for price and the quantity. This is how it patches the items. Next line, if you look at this line, this area resets all the things. Clear the text boxes for the next item entry. That's why it clears always. This is how the button works. Now we have a nice little thing going on with the creating invoices and going back and forth. Let's go back to my flow. Manage your flow, where create your flow. This is the flow, right? Next step will be, I have created, now we have stored the information in my SharePoint list. Next step will be getting the stuff from the SharePoint list. You search for a step, SharePoint, click. First thing will be, I'm just getting one item, because I know the invoice headers will be always one header, one item. So it shouldn't be get items, it should be get item. Let's search for it, get item. See, this is the one. I create the get item. Where is the list coming from? It should be from my this list, and it will list down all my list. I need the header. and make sure the ID from top here. For now, I'll just create 1. It gets the ID 1. Next step will be new step, get items, all the items from let's click SharePoint, and get items. Get items where is coming from my same list, same site, and the items. And then I'm going to do something like this here, filter. So if you just see here this area, if you say get items, it will say, okay, get me all the items within this. I don't need everything. I need whatever the invoice headers item, because I have stored it as the invoice ID on this list. This list, I will show it you the hidden columns. Show hide columns, the ID. So these are the invoice header. Where is the ID? ID, this ID, apply. So 1, 2, 3, 4, this ID will be listed under list invoice. Oops, not that one. These items, you will see here, see the repeated parts. You will see all this 1, 1, 1. These items belong to invoice 1. This is for the 2. This is for the 3, and these 4, and this is the last item I created. Now we can just search from these items and pick it up, right? And let me go back to my flow. Right, this is how you do that. You can just say invoice ID, the item, invoice ID equals, and then you have to put 2 single quotes, middle of that, just get item from this item. So I'll just, let me show you why the renaming is important. Rename, I'm going to say invoice header and rename invoice items. This is why it's important, right? So now if you pick up this equal, go middle of that, let me check. Yeah, now you will see here, look at this one. It's nicely, the header is like, say, okay, get item, invoice header. If you have like plenty of 3, 4 get items, you know what, which variable, which items to pick up. It says, okay, get item, invoice header, right? Now I need the ID. Yes, that's the one. Now it will pick up the correct ID, the correct list for you, right? This is how you pick up these things. Next step will be a new step. Now we have the header, we have the items. Now we have to pick up the, what do you call, the template. Next new step, you see, search for Word. You'll get Word Online Business. You have like 2 premium connectors. First thing will be just say populate a Microsoft Word template. You click on that one. Now the location, I have to select the location. I'm going to say OneDrive for business because I have stored it on OneDrive, my template. Document library is OneDrive. Now click. Let's go inside the bootcamp and then select the template and template. Now look what will happen. Now this is the fun part. See, now you have all the information from your template. Only thing you have to do is get this information and store it here. And this area, this is the repeating area. You will see item 1, you can add new item and can just add plenty of manual items. I don't want manual item. I need to get this item automatically populate. This is how you do that. So first thing, I'll show it to you. If you see this icon, small icon, if it's not visible, I'll just call it, see this icon. This is very important, this icon. You click on that icon and then it turn into invoice items. See, now it's picking up the array invoice items from my template. This is the repeating item. This will be the header information. You click, you get it from not the invoice item. See, no, just scroll down. You get it from the header. get me the invoice number is the ID, and the total should be again amount from the invoice. So not the item, it should be from the header. And invoice date, I'm going to search for date, invoice date. See, you have two different dates from the due date, and then select the due date, yes, due date, and the customer from the invoice customer. See, the customer. Now tricky part is like populating these items. This is how you do that. I'll show it to you, and then I'll go back to the finished flow. You should know it. This is how you do that. You just start before this one. You just click. We know this is a repeating item. I'm going to add another action. I'm going to say initialize variable. Variable initialize. So I'm going to rename this variable into invoice items. Variable name is invoice items, and type should be array. That's it. Next step, click an action. So I'm going to go through each item here. So it should be each. Apply to each. Yes, apply to each. I'm going to rename it again, saying each invoice item. Now should be value from this. See, value. Next step, now you have this array variable. You click and then set array. See, set variable. Just click variable, and you will see append array, append to array variable. Now you have this append. The variable name should be from the top. Click. Now this value, this is important. This value, I'm going to create an object here. This is called a JSON object. So you just, it's like a key value pair. You have this key, and then colon, and then you have the value like that, right? So this is how to do that. So again, these values must be totally matching from your template. If we say invoice item, that's okay. This should be invoice item. The same name must be here. That's a must. Remember that. You go back to the flow, then say invoice item colon, and then coming from these values. See the item values. So you will say invoice item, click item. Like that, you can just populate all those variables. Let's go back to my, and then finally come back to your word template. Just here, it should be invoice items. This is the most like tricky part here. Then everything else is just a straightforward. Let me go back to my finished flow. Manage, no, that one, this one. See, apply to each item. I have created this invoice amount variable. Not that one, sorry. This one, you have this invoice items, and then apply to each values, and then I'm gonna create this array of like this. You will see now. See, the invoice item is here, invoice item, and then value for it, the quantity, and then the value for it. Then I have used a function here formatting the number because I need the 2 decimal places, and I have created another variable to store the amount, and then I have picked up that amount in the expression. Let me show that to you. See, the expression is here. See, to correct format with the comma. That's right. That's why I get an extra variable. Now populate, same thing, all the values. And then next step, I have created a template called create a file with the populated one. See, this area, if you look at this one, you will see the file name. I mentioned here the invoice temp docx with the format date type because it won't repeat, and then the path is invoice path, and file content will be from here, this template, from populate template. Now I have created a file. Next step, another thing called convert Word document to PDF, right? You have the PDF, and the path is coming from, oops, sorry. The path is coming from this area, the previous one. Finally, create the PDF. See, again invoice dash the format date type UTC now.pdf, and the PDF document from here. Store it in this folder. Right, this is the flow. Final step, I have deleted. I'll go back to my this flow. Now remember this manual trigger. What I did was I just clicked here and then deleted it. Okay. And click Power Apps and click Power Apps. Now you have it here. Next step, I clicked here. I have hard-coded one. No, ask in Power Apps. This is how you do that. So simply you can do this. Now from Power Apps, you can send it to this item. From Power Apps, this is how you do that. I'll go to my invoicing. This one. Yeah, this app. Let's add a printer button, icons. Printer. Goes down here, I guess. Yeah, the printer button. I'm going to say nice. Let's say size 32. Yep, and make it on this end. Looks nice. Now go to actions. You see this item. See, is the important part. Power Automate. If you have created the sort of thing, you click Power Automate. You will see all your Power Automation here. Whatever. Now I have two things. I didn't save that previous one. You have this PDF flow. Click. It will add. Yes, now it has added. Now next thing is like get item. The invoice ID will be, I close this. Invoice ID must be this item dot as that. Now when you click it, it comes to this Power App, Power My Flow. This flow get executed. This one get executed, and it will go through these things. So that's the plan for today. I think I'm done with this one. Let's try my application again. Yes, the final one. Let me show it to you. The final round. Again, you click, go back home. It's always good. You just maybe this one, this Power Bootcamp. Click print, $112. Now it's going back to OneDrive. Go back to my OneDrive. Invoices. So yeah, the document is created. Now it will create the invoice quickly. After application run. Let's wait a second. Maybe refresh. Yeah, it's created. See, a few seconds ago with this date time format, you click. Now you have your nice little invoice here. Item 4, the paper clips, the items and the values, everything is there, right? I think I am done with this. I have completed what I have done. Let's go back to my final slides. That will be the questions if you have any doubts, or maybe, yeah. Let me check. I think that's done here. Go back to my any questions for me?
Thank you, Fikri, for that.
Yes.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah. So thank you, Fikri. So yep, just some feedback. Lots of feedback saying it's a great session. Thank you, well explained. Maroon was asking, can we use Power Apps to connect to an ERP for invoice ID and continue the flow like here?
Yeah, this is how do you do that. For ERP, normally any ERP will allow a REST API endpoint, right? So there should be a REST API endpoint within the Power Apps. You have a connector to access the REST API. So let me check. I have a YouTube video. Maybe let's have created one. YouTube/. So it's the same thing. I have created an application, a small Power App. Videos.
And so Vignesh is asking, do we have, in Power Apps, do we have an API to connect? And I think that was essentially...
we can connect an API. I have, I think Microsoft, I'll create a video regarding that one. This one. So this will, let's hide these things. Yeah, this one. This app is like a step-by-step application. I think it's loading. Breaking Bad. This is an API. If you this TV series, this API, it's called a custom connector. I think you can't see my screen, right?
No, we can't.
Let me share my screen again. Let me share my screen again. I'll show it you quickly within Power Apps. Now you should be able to see the screen. Let me. Right. So this one, this API is using an API on Power Apps. Let me just go to my Power Apps. This application. It's a quick one. Click. Power Apps. So if you click on these connectors, you have the plenty of connectors here. You can just click connectors, and then you go for the custom connector, like here. Just come back to here. You just click done, data and custom connectors. Let me check whether it's loading. Yeah. And you click new custom connector, click new, and you can just use from blank. Let me just go through here. See this one. You can use it from blank. That means a blank connector, you can just create your own, or you can just get it from an Azure service, or import an open API, or maybe from a URL or a Postman collection. This is how you start. So if you just go with the blank connection, you can just create an API name. Let me say my ERP API. Connect. So now you can just create, you will have to say, okay, HTTPS or not. Then this part will ask you the endpoint of your API. For now, you can just give any endpoint. Let me say, just say myendpoint.com and the API. And then go back to the security if you want. If any authentication, you can just select this authentication or to API key or basic authentication. Then you can just tell the definition. You start a new action. You just summarize it, and then you just write a description and the operation ID. Let me say get invoices. And then you have to say important, or this will be just these items will be allow you your API to display under the flow on the right side expression menu, and you can just import it from the sample. You can just save the JSON, whatever the JSON they send it to you. You can say this is a get one. After finishing it from Power Apps, your application, you can just search for a connector, just click on it. It will be used as the normal connector. That's how you connect through your invoicing API, whatever it is. That's simple. You just get an API that will be as simple as that. Then you will get the JSON input as these tables. If it's a JSON array, you will get a table. If it's one record, it will get as a record. It will act as a data source for your application. This is how you get the invoices from your ERP or any other API, maybe a third-party API using, if you have an ASP.NET application using an API, you can get it from there as well. Only thing you have to create the custom connector for that API. That's it.
Well, one thing you have it from Fikri. Fikri explains how you can create your custom connector to connect to your third-party APIs. Fikri, there is one final question. Mayan Kumar is asking, great session. Will the flow give feedback to the Canvas app. So, for example,
Yes.
if the flow
Yeah.
failed to create an invoice, will the user see anything?
Yeah, good question. So in the flow, just go to your flow. At the end, you can add the new step. Maybe you can just check for an error, or maybe whatever it is, you can just go through this if conditions, and you search for Power Apps. Power Apps. You will get Power Apps, and you will have the respond to Power Apps or flow. You can respond to Power Apps using an input. What happened? Then you will get using your Power Apps. When the button is like clicked, this button, end of this button, if you click on this button, like it will act as a function, then it will return, then you can just say update context a variable, and then this function will get the output from there. Only thing you have to, at the end of your flow, you have to add this part. Respond to Power App, any input, you can just click any sort of input, maybe a file, email, whatever it is, yes, no. Normally what we say in some variables, text variables, all the variables will be available to your Power App. This is how you do that.
Awesome. Fantastic, Fikri. You covered a lot today and you answered a lot of people's questions. So thank you so much once again.
Yeah. Thank you guys for giving me the time. Yeah.
Thank you, Fikri. So please share your contact details for people who want to stay in touch with you.
Yes. Thanks,
Big
guys.
thanks
Bye-bye.
once again to Fikri.
Bye.
Thank you, Fikri. For those who don't know Fikri, he's 13 years as an MVP, running the developer community, and now great to see how he is now supporting the citizen developers. From being a professional developer, he's showing how developers can now use citizen developer tools like Power Apps to simplify their tasks, reduce the technical debt. So that was a really, really great use case. Thank you, Fikri. It was a great pleasure to host you. So now on to our next speaker. So our next speaker, let's see if he's online. Wale Youssef. Wale.